Are we live? Welcome to Real Guitar Success. Now the first Tuesday of every month, except this one. This one's the second Tuesday. Okay, you get it, New Year's and all that stuff. We have a great show for you today, and I have Ami Fields with us.
Hey, hey.
And Felix over in the what do you call that? The behind the curtain there. Today, we're going to go through a lesson on how to write a song. And Ami told me she's a little nervous about it.
I am.
She's never written a song, but that's okay. It's actually, I think, perfect to have somebody that doesn't feel terribly confident, because that's what I usually get with students. Once we do this, we're going to answer your questions, and we've got a lot of questions already. Mm-hmm. But please feel free to add your questions in the chat. It helps if you start off with the word question so we can see it and separate it out from just comments right away. Mm-hmm. But she's going to keep looking at the questions. We'll answer the ones that we've got ahead of time first, and then come back and answer the questions on the chat. Also, at the end, we're going to do a raffle.
Yeah.
For a $50 Amazon card. And the raffle, everybody who has in Real Guitar Success membership and has completed the monthly practice session, they are entered in the raffle. So that's going to be fun. Let's get started. How to write a song. What do you think, Ami?
I guess. Let's do it.
There's three aspects to writing a song. Now, the first aspect is making the chords, creating the chord progression, we'll call it. That's the chords in a series. And the melody. The third is lyrics. And I'm not going to deal with lyrics today. The words, that's a whole area in and of itself, and not one that I have a lot of experience in.
Yeah.
I've written some songs for church, but mostly my experience is writing instrumental songs. Mm-hmm. I have 6 CDs of my own instrumental guitar music. And for me, it's a blast. It's one of the most fun things I can imagine doing. Now, before we get started, let me say that I find with students who have asked me to help them write songs, one of the big things that stops them is their own attitude about writing songs. Mm-hmm. Usually some combination of you have to have a special gift to start off with and some kind of special education, mm-hmm. which I remember feeling that way. It was more nebulous. I didn't know what education necessarily, not necessarily a college degree, but some special announcement that you can write a song.
Certificate of songwriting.
I don't even know where it was supposed to come from, but it was like this hanging over my head. And I started out by just writing very simple songs without any ambition to go out into the world and become famous. Mm-hmm. And I found little by little over time that, in fact, I could just keep making them better and improving it. I learned a little bit more about music, added that expertise into creating the songs, and they work back and forth. Yeah. Next thing you know, I set aside time to just make a CD of songs I'd created over years. We're going to start with how to write a melody first. Then I'll go into how to write a chord progression. You can do it either way. You can write a melody first, or you can write the chord progression. I do both. I'll often be singing a melody or hear a melody in my head, and then I'll reproduce it and record it, and then I'll go to my studio and start playing it on my guitar, and then try to find chords that go with it. The other way I often do this is to play chords and then come up with a melody. I kind of start hearing a melody in my head and start figuring out. I don't start with a whole melody usually. Only once I can remember I had a dream and it was very clear. And yeah, and I woke up and went in the bathroom like at 5:30 in the morning and started playing it and recording it because I knew I'd forget.
That's cool.
Yeah, Sevilla was the song.
Sevilla,
yeah. On my New World Flamenco Jazz album.
Nice.
But for the most part, I get little pieces and then I keep expanding it over time. And sometimes I'll just take a piece here and a piece there and put them together and go, oh yeah, they work. I made some notes. Let me grab that. Just to make sure I don't repeat everything or forget something. So to create a melody, there are several different ways to do it. One way is to hum the melody. Well, first of all, hear something in your head and then hum it verbally. And record that is what I usually do, because I'm going to forget. If I try to hum it and then quickly get to my guitar, I'll forget and start changing it. So I record it on my iPhone usually, and then I'll listen to it, start playing my guitar. I start forgetting it, I'll go back to the iPhone and listen to it again. Mm-hmm. I always record, once I get something that sounds good, I'll record it again on my guitar, on my iPhone, usually, just because it's very handy. And I would recommend, by the way, if you have a phone, use it. Use the recording function. I just play around with the melody until I get something that sounds good to me. Now, this means I have to let go of judgment whether it's good or not. Yeah. First of all, there's no outside judge. If you're trying to make a hit record, there are other issues. You're not. Don't go there, especially if you're just starting out.
Yeah.
But play it for yourself, and then you can always revise it and expand it. So keep in mind that whatever you come up with is not a finished product, not even close. Mm-hmm. It's just a kernel of an idea. Another way that I can get going with a melody is to start with a basic scale. So for instance, this is a C scale. So I'll start with that scale and play around with the rhythm. And I'll go back down the scale. That's the starting of my new melody now, and I'll expand on that. I just went up the scale another note. Otherwise, this note's right out of the scale. Change the rhythm a little bit, but I started with a basic scale. Now, even if I get something that I think I might forget, I'll record that again. So I can always come back to that. You can start by using a melody from somebody else. Here's one. No, I got it. Ah. Everybody recognize that melody?
No.
No?
Oh, yes. Got it.
Maybe if I play it right.
Okay.
So now I'll start there, and I'm going to start altering it. I just changed the rhythm of it.
Yeah.
Sounds different now.
Yeah.
I took the first half and altered it into a different melody.
That's cool.
Same thing. I started with the same starting and altered it.
That's a cool idea. That makes like songwriting seem graspable.
And that's the thing.
It's cool.
All of this works by finding a way to get into it and then expanding that opening. Keep working on it. Start with something that either improvise off a scale or an existing melody, and then keep playing around with it. After a while, you'll go back to the original and go, oh, that doesn't sound anything like the original. But that's the idea, is to get into it and keep expanding and working on it. As you do that, you get more confidence. Now, I want to start working on, I'm going to go into what it takes to play a chord progression first. If you start with a chord progression, what I usually or often do is I'll start with something that's fairly standard, what I'll call a common chord progression. So if you don't know what that is, a basic common chord progression is a series of chords that is used commonly throughout music. One such common chord progression is a 3 common chord progression. We often number them in music to keep track of it, to make it into like a template. So 3 common chord progression would be a 1 chord, meaning the 1 chord in the scale. G chord would be the 1 chord of G. C would be the 4, G, A, B, C. And the 5 chord would be D, G, A, B, C, D. More about that in the theory. But the idea is I'm using a progression that is very common. Not terribly original. That same 3 chords have been used over and over and over. But now I'll add a chord to that chord progression, a melody, and I'll come up with something. How about if you play that chord progression?
Okay. Can you remind me of the C chord?
G, C.
Let's see. Like that?
Right there. And then D. And then back to G. So maybe just 4 strums each.
Cool.
Now, before we get started, when you play a chord progression like that, you're going to want to choose notes out of the G scale for the melody, at least to start. You don't have to 100% stick to a scale, but start there and then make decisions about if you want to go out. So I know I'm going to use a G scale. Let me find a G scale here. I'll use this scale up here. This would be a simpler one, but okay. I don't want to use those low notes. I want to use the higher notes. Let's do it. 1, 2, ready, play. Okay, I can tell her guitar's a little out of tune, so I'm not gonna beat that into the ground. What I did is just play the scale over the chord progression, and now what I would probably do is start playing with that scale and changing the rhythm and changing maybe even the order of the notes and things like that till I got something that sounded good to me. Now, when you take a common progression, you can also just start playing around with it and add some changes. So this would be the common progression we just did. C, D. Now I might want to try adding a surprise chord there and see if it sounds good to me. That's all that matters right now.
Yeah, that's cool.
Different. I just changed it up a little bit, but not completely different. See, the thing is, our ears are not used to hearing something. We're not going to generally like something that's totally different.
Yeah.
If you make a chord progression that's like no other, your ear's going to go, oh. We're not used to that. We're looking for patterns. But if you take something that's you've heard over and over, but change it 10%, you can get into that. Now you've provided that stability of a pattern, and you provide a little surprise to make it more interesting. So let me do it again. I didn't go to D that time. I went to F instead. Let me try a different one. There, for that first C, I substitute an A. That sounds like a decent progression as well. Okay, then I would record that and then play a melody along with it. So I'll get into in a minute how I record those things, because when you're recording two things together, you can't use your phone.
Right.
Or there's software you can do that on your phone, but in general, it's not going to use the same recording function that you're used to. Now, let me give you some tips on how to actually technically make this work. I often use my computer, and I'll use a program called Audacity, Audicity. I'll put that in the show notes, a link to the website. It's free, and it has the ability to record both several tracks, meaning you can record a chord progression and the melody. So then I would go ahead and make a chord progression and start playing around with a melody. All the while I'm listening to the chord progression on the computer. Now I've recorded both, and I can play both back and hear how they sound. I don't like it? Delete one or just mute it and go back and play another melody. I'll do that a dozen times and then pick which one I like best. Then take the one I like best and start saying, well, if I can make that one better, how could I improve that? And I'll change a note or two, or I'll take half of one I liked here and the other half of the one I liked here, start putting them together.
I like that.
It's fun. It's like kids play, actually.
Yeah.
And thinking about it like play makes it less stressful. That's what the word I was looking for, less stressful.
Yeah. I know one of the reasons that I never really wanted to like get interested in writing my own songs is this feeling of like my song has to sound good. And I want it to sound really good, and I don't feel like I have the know-how to make it sound really good. But I like this idea of kind of going in with a sense of curiosity and kind of trial and error and just playing with it. Yeah. I
think that's partly what worked for me, is I didn't ever have any ambition it was going to sound good. So I didn't worry about it.
Yeah.
I didn't think that I had to get approval from somebody else.
Right, right.
I found some of my best songs come from I'll make a phrase and I'll record it. And then I'll save it, and I'll make another phrase or two and record them. Then later I'll listen through my phrases and say, well, this one could go with this one. Well, this one needs something at the end. I'll listen to some phrases. Yeah, that one fits. That combines at the end.
Yeah.
I got this idea actually originally from people who write a lot, write books, we'll say, but whatever kind of writing. What they would do is get ideas and then carry a pad around with them and a pencil and write down the phrases and ideas that they had. Sentences they liked, words that they just like to use. And then they'd go to their pad when they sit down to write and look through all their ideas and use them and expand on them.
That's cool.
Excuse me.
Actually, my fiance does that. He's a lyricist. And he does that all the time. He has notes on his iPhone. He'll just like see something that sparks his interest and jot it down.
I get ideas often when I'm driving. So I'll take out my phone and I'll just quickly sing it into my phone and record it.
Yeah.
I'm good enough at singing to be able to get the notes fairly right. I wouldn't try to sell it as a recording.
Right.
You don't have to be a professional singer to just get the basic idea down. And then I'll go and play with it on my guitar. Get to where you love revising. And I say that because I'm not saying you got to do that. I'm saying you can find enjoyment in that, and that's where the songs come together. Not just coming out of your head and bam, they're great. It's in this revising over and over. And again, writers tell me the same thing. They get a kernel of an idea, and it's always a rough draft. And the actual finished project is 12 rough drafts until they feel it's refined.
Yeah.
Anybody who writes, does it once and throws it out is not a good writer. That's not how it works. Also, it helps to understand basic song structure. I'm talking verse, chorus, bridge, those kinds of words. And that takes a little more studying as well as listening and identifying parts of a song. When I'm putting a song together, I naturally hear a verse and a chorus. Meaning, a verse is a kind that kind of sounds like you're going somewhere, and then when we get to the chorus, it's going to be a part that you repeat over and over and over. A bridge is one part in the middle that's different than all the other parts. This is an area of study that I think can best be learned by listening to songs and identifying them. Excuse me, can you grab me a glass of water? Thanks. The other thing that I think is worth considering is work on ear training on a regular basis. Because the better you get at hearing an idea in your head and transferring it to your guitar, the easier and more fun it becomes.
Yes.
Ear training, the best I found is to just listen to short phrases of music and then imitate them on your guitar. You can do that just by listening to a CD and trying to copy little parts of it. I actually create lessons for students where I'll play phrases and have them copy back and then play a phrase and have them copy back. It makes it a little more accessible because the phrases are short and simple. But any way that you can find to just work at listening and playing something on your guitar will improve your ears. Thank you. That's perfect. Perfect, thank you. And then finally, it's helpful to share your creations, but in a safe place.
Yeah.
Don't run out and show everybody and expect for approval. It's not going to happen. Matter of fact, it's probably a bad idea. A safe place. First of all, I suggest you work on yourself for a while, by yourself. But a safe place might be an online forum of other people who are creating songs, so you're all in the same boat. Or if you have a loved one that you know you can trust and not just poo-poo your ideas, that can work. But I'd go easy on that. Just don't expect other people to hear what you have in your head. I've made this mistake myself. Even in the studio, I'll come in with a very rough idea and expect other people to be able to hear the finished part in my head. It just doesn't usually go well. Finally, and most importantly, be patient with yourself. Persistent. Keep coming back on. Keep coming back at it. It's the kind of thing, the more you do, the easier it gets, the more fun it is, and the better sounding the actual the product of your creativity becomes, little by little over time. Okay, there are several areas in here that I'd be happy to expand on, and we could do that in questions, or if I see something that is of interest to people, like how to create a melody. I can go much more into that. I'd be glad to create a lesson at some point on YouTube or even another subject in our online Real Guitar Live.
Yeah, cool.
So that's it for my presentation. How about some questions?
We have plenty. We do have some pre-submitted, but kind of while we're fresh out of the topic, I do just have a quick question that somebody asked here online live. One of them was, where can they find your music?
My music is available on Amazon, on iTunes, on everywhere. Everywhere online.
Yeah.
I can't think of any. Spotify, on Pandora. Mm-hmm. Just type in Tomas Michaud, and Tomas with no H, Tomas, Michaud. You'll find everywhere online that I can think of, you'll find my CDs. And you can listen to samples of songs. CD Baby. Amazon has all kinds of samples of all the music. Thanks for asking.
Yeah. We do have somebody that asked a good question. It says, you just mentioned how important ear training can be. And they said, but ear training seems so hard in the beginning. Is there an easy way to start to identify any note on the fretboard?
What do you think? Do you have a way to help students with that?
Yeah, I was actually, before we started live, I was just telling Thomas and Felix that as a teacher, sometimes I struggle explaining things when it comes to like ear training and rhythm because it just comes naturally to me. Like I don't even know when I learned how to do any of that stuff. It feels like I've done it my whole life. But one thing that I do with my students is just to like dip their toe in the ear training pool is I will just play a note. Let's say I play this note, right? And I say, okay, find that note. And I play it over and over and over. And then they're sitting around like searching on every string on their fretboard. And essentially what I'll do is I'll tell them to stop after they found a note. Say they're playing this note, or that's a better example. So I'm playing this and they're playing this. And I say, now listen carefully. Is your note higher or lower than mine? So that's a good place to start. If you identify if the note that you're hearing is higher in pitch or lower in pitch than what you're playing, then it's a really great start. And then from there you say, okay, it's higher. So that means that you need to go lower in sound. So you need to move your finger back or whatever it may be. So starting with just a single note is probably my biggest recommendation. And then from there, I'll go into phrases. So now I want my student to play that back to me, right? But sometimes just starting with like a whole melody or a song can be challenging. Mm-hmm. So start with a single note. Have a friend. If you have another friend that has another instrument, any instrument, just tell them to play a note and then try and find it.
Yeah, I like it. Mm-hmm. Now, in contrast to Ami, the ear training thing was a lot of work for me. I did not seem to come naturally, maybe because my brain works a little different. I came from more of a mathematics, science point of view, not naturally musical, I would say. Though my grandfather played violin.
Oh, yeah. That's a fun fact.
What helped me a lot was a process, and I got help in actually the junior college, a process of they'd play little short phrases of just a few notes and have me imitate it back. It started with even just 2 notes.
Yeah.
And have me play back. And it was very hard at first, but I started small and just kept getting better and better at it, to where I can hear a phrase in my head and hold on to it with quite a few notes now and play it on the guitar. I created lessons like that. I call them by copy playing, and they are available in my membership site, and progressive, from very easy ones up to more complex ones. And what I do is I play on the videos short phrases, and you can see what I'm playing, so it helps. That way you can have a visual as well. Yeah. And then play it back. And then I will repeat the same phrase and give you another chance. And the video, of course, you can play over and over. The other thing I would say is start small and slow, but learn the main scale that you're trying to learn the notes from. So if I'm doing notes from the G scale, I'll do a by copy just with those notes, because then the student can practice the G scale and they got a sense of what notes they're going to choose from. It's not anywhere on the guitar. Right. It's just going to be out of those 5 notes when they hear it.
Right. Yeah. Ear training is really important. if you really want to be able to like write your own songs and improvise and stuff.
I think it's really important.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things that you have to do little at a time over a period of time.
Yes.
It's sort of like an exercise program, getting great abs, let's say.
Yeah.
Which I don't know too much about, but but I know it's not the kind of thing you do 5 sessions in the gym and you got it.
Right.
You're going to have to do slow, work it up, go over a period of time. Keep coming back at it, that kind of thing.
Well, the cool thing is that it's one of those things I think that gets easier over time for most folks. I mean, everyone learns differently and everyone's different with how things come to them. But I know that although it feels like it's been natural to me my whole life, as I've gotten older and more developed as a musician, I recognize that I'm like, oh, this sounds better than it did 3 years ago. You know, even though it feels natural, I can still see improvement. Okay, so we have some pre-submitted questions. Also, today is Elvis's birthday, so shout out.
Yes.
Shout out to Elvis Presley.
And shout out to
Nick,
who pointed out it's Elvis's birthday today.
Happy birthday, Elvis. Okay, so here's some questions. I have original songs that I play with the chords. How do I find the melody to them? Is there an easy way to do it, or do I have to use trial and error till I find the right notes? It could take forever.
Yes. And this is what I was talking about, learn to love the revision process.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the process for me is I'll play the chord progression on a tape so I can hear it over and over, and then listen in my head and try to hear a melody that sounds good. Then when I hear, I don't go for like a big long melody, some little phrase, then I'll start playing it on my guitar. When I get it on my guitar, then I'll try to expand on it. And it is a lot of trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
There's no magic formula that I know of. There might be some theoretical numbering system, but I'm not going to be very happy with a melody that I created by a mathematical numbering system, if there is such one. Yeah. You have to enjoy the process and kind of make peace with it's a lot of trial and error.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how writing is for me. I have to keep writing stuff and then rewriting it. And
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a little bit of trial and error, and relax. That's a big one for me. Like, I know that's part of the reason why I've pushed learning how to songwrite or like feeling comfortable songwriting off for so long, is because it's stressful for me. I'm like, I want it to sound good, and I want it to sound good now. But sometimes you just have to relax and let the notes flow. And you play a note that doesn't sound good, and you make a mental note and say, okay, that one didn't sound good. I won't go back to that note. Yeah. Okay, another question from Dennis. How many notes of melody can you duplicate before it is considered plagiarism from another song?
Okay. This is one of the advantages of getting questions ahead of time, because I thought that out a little bit and even looked it up. Mm-hmm. There is no magic formula for numbers of notes, legally anyway. But basically, when you create something and somebody challenges you that it sounds like something they created, the courts would look at two things. First of all, if you have access, in other words, if there's a reasonable chance that you had heard that other song that you're copying. And second of all, if it sounds, by people's ears, reasonably like the other song. So I'm imagining in the court that there's no formula, but they have to get people to listen to the songs, and I assume they'd use some experts and say, that sounds like that song. Mm-hmm. That's probably the best answer I can think of.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's part of the reason things like the fake book exists, right? They alter the songs just slightly, and that's how they're able to put lots of copy. Yeah, so there's...
I assumed the fake books were just violating copyrights, and they were underground books. That's what I was told.
I don't know. I'm not exactly sure, but I know some people like change the key or take away a note, a couple notes.
I can guarantee you, if you take a copywritten music and change the key, that's not going to change.
Yeah.
And a couple of notes would not change it.
Right.
Because that wouldn't satisfy the sounds reasonably like. Exactly. It would still sound reasonably like the song.
Yeah, it would. That's true. Okay, let's see. We got some more questions from Thomas Stark. How do I get all 3 fingers to move from one chord to another?
Okay. Short question, but we could write a book on that. The shortest answer I could think of is practice.
Yeah, that's true.
The thing is, you need a methodical practice if you want to make a fairly quick progress, and quick is a perception. I mean, what I'd be most afraid of with students, if they don't have a methodical process, they're going to flop around and they get frustrated and quit.
Yeah.
And then they'll never get.
Right.
Probably even if you're pretty random at it, if you do it long enough, you'll get it.
Right.
But methodical, what I mean by that is start with one chord, basically get the fingering. I have students play the chord several times, keep coming back at it. Do that actually if you're just starting out, even for a few days. Then add another chord, do the same thing, play the chord. Do that for a few days. Then when you can play both of those chords so they sound reasonably okay by themselves, start going from one to the other very slowly. Play one chord, maybe a couple times, and then change. Very slowly. Then start picking up speed. When you get to a point where that's going pretty well, try adding a third chord. In that case, I'd probably go with a G. I usually add chords that are in the key of the first one that you started with, so you have the possibility of playing a song with it as you start adding chords to it.
Yeah.
How's that sound to you?
That sounds good. Same thing I tell my students, and we've talked about this before, right? My tip would be to make sure that you're changing chords in time. So keep a rhythm with it. You don't want to go like jum 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 and moving jum 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 jum. That's not really going to help you. And I do something called speed builders with my students. So we'll start with, let's say, 2 chords that you're okay at. You're going to strum one 6 times and 6 times and 6 times, 6 times. Only go as fast as you can change chords, and then you cut that down to 4 strums each, and then 2 strums each, and then to the point where you're just strumming quarter notes. So you're going blum, blum, blum. Yep.
Yeah.
You do that
so
over
it's progressive.
and over.
It is great to have either a teacher or a system that guides you, but you can do it on your own. It's just you have to be disciplined and persistent.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, a few more questions here, and we also have a few live folks who have questions.
Good.
This is from Joseph. I've really got discouraged in learning how to play the guitar. I haven't picked it up for months. I just can't seem to get motivated. When I did practice, it seemed I was just spinning my wheels and not progressing. I'd like to start all over again. Give me some encouragement to motivate me.
Just do it! First thing I would say, Joseph, is it's harder than most people think to just find random YouTube videos or lessons online or books or CDs without any kind of order to them. It's really hard to stay motivated because you're very likely to not do something in an order that makes sense. In other words, you're very likely to pick something and then something very hard, something easy that doesn't have a actual direction in it. And you can't know because you haven't played guitar, so you don't know what the process is yet. Yeah. The best thing you can do is get some lessons, either online, progressive step-by-step lessons, or with a live teacher.
Yeah.
That said, some people are more naturally gifted than others. It comes easier for some people than others. I would say I'm probably on the middle-ish in terms of natural coming easy. It really helps to break things down to small pieces and to not make big jumps. The big jumps I used to find very discouraging, but even worse, they started creating bad habits because I'd try to do things that I'd cramp up my hands to just make something work, and then over time that would start becoming a habit, that tension, that cramping. So it pays to break things down to small steps. And again, a good system or good teacher, not all teachers are created equal, but a good teacher would know the right way of breaking that down to help you.
Right. And I think also having some guidance and some accountability. Having a teacher, you have this kind of like weekly accountability, even if you're just a part of an online community with some kind of forum or something, so that you have to kind of constantly check in. And it's not a magical fix. It's something that you kind of have to like want within yourself too, because you can even come to lessons and still not practice.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. There's no one way of making it happen.
Right.
The biggest thing and it really bothered me after a while, I'd get from students, and I hear this story over and over, adults. Hey, I tried to play guitar, and they're coming to me to talk about maybe giving it another shot. I tried to play guitar. I watched some YouTube videos. I picked up a few books here and there, tried everything, and I just can't seem to get it. I must not be telling it. I found it frustrating and quit. Now, those people got somehow enough energy at least to come see me to say, I want to give it another try. Maybe a teacher would help me. But I can't only imagine all the people that I'll never see that give it that kind of try and didn't do it. And I can say for sure from what they described, yes, most people would fail. Because that's not how you're going to learn guitar. Mm-mm. Random videos, random pieces of books, they're not even following the book from start to finish. A few, watching some people play licks, it's not going to work for most people.
Yeah, that's true. That's a tough one. Okay, a couple more questions. Jeff says, problem with bar chords. I think we get this question every month. I think we get it every month.
The biggest thing I can say about that is my experience with students is that they're trying to play bar chords at a time when they need the bar chord for a song, and that's too big of a leap to go from just regular open chords to bar chord. It really helps to have some exercises to prepare for playing bar chords, preferably before you even try it. Now, if you need a bar chord, at least do the exercises along with trying to play the bar chord. One exercise I really like, and I have a whole series of these, but one I would say that's really good is you make a bar and then strum one note at a time. Now what I'm doing is I'm pulsing my left hand. So I'm just trying to get a good sound and then releasing. I do it all the way down and then up to the next fret. This is a summary of the exercise, and you can find on YouTube a fuller lesson on this. I'll try and remember to make a link for it. And then up, so on. I do have students do that a little bit every day, up and back down, maybe just 3 or 4 minutes, until their notes are sounding clear. And then I have them add other fingers and start making a chord out of it.
Yeah.
Then start using that chord in the song.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there are a whole lot of resources. I know you specifically have a lot of resources regarding bar chords, and it's something that you kind of have to keep going back to. Yeah.
I created a course called Bar Chord Boot Camp, and it's a step-by-step using exercises like that and starting with the easier bar chords and moves up into the more complex bar chords.
Cool. Good. Okay. Gary says, still having trouble keeping on the beat when using strum patterns. Are different strum patterns better for 4/4 time than 6/8 time? And Gary, if you're live, if you can clarify that last part a little bit for us, that'd be really great.
The last part about the 4/4 and 6/8.
Yeah. Are different strum patterns better for 4/4 time than 6/8 time?
So, just in case you're asking this, a strum pattern for 4/4 would be different than 6/8.
Right.
So 6/8 I usually think of it as a pulse of 3 and 3. So ba 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 1 2 3 4 5 6, or 1 ba ba 2 ba ba. Same thing, and I feel that do 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 do. And so a strum pattern would be down down. So it's a different feel than 4/4. 4/4 is 1 2 3 4.
So keeping on the beat when using different strum patterns.
You are not alone. First, when I'm learning chord progressions, and this may not be part of the question, but let me just mention it, I usually practice without a strum pattern first for that reason.
Yes.
Because when I start adding, have students add a strum pattern with learning the basic chord movements, it's too much. And it gets crazy. Felix is saying, that's not going to work. So learn to at least be able to change chords slowly and then add a strum and then put the two together.
Yeah.
And the thing is to start with simpler strums too. I see students that come up with these, like this one it's not a real complex strum, but it is harder than a basic down, down, up. Start with a strum that and get that before you start adding these skipping. This is a skip strum. I call it pop rock strum. Down, down, up, skip, up, down. It's harder to keep track of where that skip is.
Yeah.
Start with a simpler strum. Now, developing timing, that's a whole... Do you have anything to say about that?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
It.
I have a lot of students that struggle with this. I make them listen to music of all different genres, and I make them clap on beats 2 and 4, and then I make them clap on beats 1 and 3. I make them find the downbeat, and I make them find the beat that's emphasized, and that's how people also learn how to do new strums. So if you're listening to a song...
1, 2, 3, 4,
right.
1.
They have to clap on the 1.
1.
Exactly. And then I also make them find the emphasis, because most of the time, depending on the genre of music, the emphasis is on 2 and 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
And this is how you would snap or clap to it. And when you're dancing to it, it's the same thing, right? And so other songs do different things. So listening to music is a huge way to do that. Yeah. And just listen to it. I make my students listen to it in the car or at school or whatever. Not at school, not in class.
Scratch that.
On your lunch break. I don't know. So listening to music, but actually working hard to actively listen, actively find where the beats are falling. And then when you're learning a new strum, I make my students mute their strings. So instead of playing an actual chord, just so that you can strictly focus, you can hear a little bit more clearly what you're doing. And I also make them count it, say it loud and play it slow. It's always what my drum teacher told me.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Mm-hmm. So I'll go 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1. If you notice, I'm like whispering the one that I'm not strumming, just so that I am cognizant of the fact that it still exists. I'm just not playing on it. And playing it loud, or saying it loud and playing it slow, it was the bane of my existence growing up. My drum teacher would be like, if you can't say it loud and play it slow, you can't play it at all. And so I definitely hold on to that principle. So even with that pop rock strum that you were doing, that this is a very common ukulele one. We call it island strum. If you actually say 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and like pay attention to your arm and what you're doing, you'll notice that it's continually going up and down. So there's all kinds of tips and tricks, but take it slowly, count it while you're playing it. Same thing goes for 6/8, and listen to more music, clap to music, try dancing to music, find the beat.
I could have really used that, especially in the beginning stages, listening to music and having somebody help me to identify the emphasis, first the beats, and then the emphasis, and just getting clear in my mind what I was aiming after.
Yeah. I'll even to help people's timing and rhythm, I'll make them snap or clap or pat their leg for a whole minute and a half of the song straight. And that's going to help with your kind of internal metronome too. And you'll find that you're going to get way off. You're going to be like, how did I end up here? And they're like way in a whole different place. Like, I knew that I was on. Well, you started on, but you just keep coming back to it. You just keep on coming back. Yeah. It'll get better, I promise. I can't promise that, but I'm pretty confident that it will get better. Okay, we've got Julie who says, if it is possible, can you please talk about how to play guitar solo in a jam group?
Wow. Okay, yes. Another very big question, but I can certainly give some tips. The biggest thing I found for myself, and I would impart this onto students, Marco, please, is to have a practice by yourself first and then take that into other people. And the way I would practice that is to record a simple chord progression on a recorder. That's one way to do it. By the way, you can also get preset tracks. Felix is going to have a talk with Marco Polo. I would play a chord progression. Keep it simple, maybe one of those, just 2 chords to start with. And then try playing a scale along with it, and then start improvising. In other words, change the feeling of the scale. So with a G, I'd start with a G scale. And I just start playing the scale over the chords and then start moving it. Now I'm practicing improvisation. And when you do that and you start, at first it's not going to sound very good. It's going to sound like a scale. But over time, it'll start sounding more like a melody or what you have in mind. Do that a little every day. Make that part of your practice. Then when you're feeling pretty good about that, and you've expanded maybe a few chords, try it with another person. I'd start with one musician to start with, like another guitar player. And then you can have a discussion, say, I'm not playing in that key yet, but could we play in, using these chords, because I'm used to that for now. And then get a little more sense of what it's like playing with another person who is not as predictable as your recorder. And then you can keep expanding on that, more keys, different chords, other musicians. Be nice to have the next one be somebody who can keep the rhythm. Right. That would be great. Yeah. How about you? Do you have any ideas?
This is one of those ones that I struggle with just because When I hear stuff, I just do it. I think the big one for me, I've always been shy of improvising and jamming with people. I just always have. And the only instrument I really feel comfortable doing that on is drums, and then saxophone too. I just play my sax with it. But that one took a long time. Like within the last 5-6 years, I've gotten more comfortable with that. The big thing for me is that I play notes that I think would sound good, that just based on my kind of scale knowledge and how that works, I give it a try. And if it doesn't sound good, then I don't play that note again. I make a mental note and I say, ooh, C sharp does not work on that chord progression. Yeah. And then you just kind of keep coming back to it. I think one of the big things is working with a supportive group. So if you're not, like, let's say you've only been playing guitar 6, 7, 8 months, you don't feel confident with what you're playing, you really kind of don't know what you're doing, don't go to the big jam where everyone's on stage and like you're going to get up there. It may be a good tool for you, but I know personally that doesn't work for me because I want it to sound a certain way. So make sure that you're working in a supportive environment. So with folks who not only know what they're doing, but understand that you're learning and are willing to work with you on it and say, oh, hey, not bad. Let me give you some tips next time, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Ready for the next one?
Go.
Great.
Let's do it. Marco Polo's happy now.
Yeah. I'm getting older by the day. I want to be able
welcome to the club.
I want to be able to change chords faster so I can at least play some songs on the guitar. I practice different chord progressions, but just doesn't seem to get fast enough to keep in time. And I have tried to play off and on for years, but my biggest challenge was the transition from one chord to the next. So
okay, that's two people with similar questions.
Mm-hmm.
So what's that last part?
Oh, yeah. So Roybeard said, I have tried to play off and on for years. My biggest challenge was transition from one chord to the next, which we kind of talked about.
So this is obviously something a lot of people have a problem with. When I hear students in the beginning stages, one of the biggest things I hear is, first of all, my fingers hurt. But they get over that usually in about 3 or 4 weeks. Then I can't change from one chord to another. So first of all, know that you're not alone with that. Second of all, it really helps to have some guidance in some form or fashion, because just winging it, most people will find it hard when it starts getting difficult to keep going.
Right.
And what somebody, either an online system or a guitar teacher would do is break it down into step-by-step parts. So you start simple chords, go slow, make you go slower than you think you need to go. Students always want to go faster, it seems to me, than they really are ready to go.
Yeah.
And then keep adding to that little step by step by step.
Yeah. And we talked about it earlier too. I mean, you know, having like planned out exercises makes a huge difference, because if you just grab the instrument and teach yourself some chords and then think that you're going to be able to jump into songs, you've got a little challenge ahead of you.
It really helps to have consistency. I mean, like practice a little every day and practice the same thing till you get it, and then move up a little faster, more chords.
Right.
I see a lot of people kind of do random stuff. They'll play this and they get tired of that and then try this, and then after weeks say, I've tried this, I can't do it.
Yeah.
But you have to do something over and over and over, and slow enough to where you start getting it. You don't want to build a habit of not getting it.
Right.
Go slow enough to where you kind of get it and improve it, and then add to that.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Duncan says, what would be the next logical scale to learn following the C scale?
Okay, good question. And I've dealt with scales recently in my membership site as well. First of all, I will say there is no one logical scale in terms of, I wouldn't recommend this one scale to all students. Scales, the C scale is a great one to start with because it can apply to lots of things. But it depends. If you want to improvise, I would go with a pentatonic scale. Because that's the most commonly used for improvising. The C scale is great because it helps especially with reed music, with understanding intervals. You can apply, it's a good foundation for applying music theory. But after that, if you want to improvise, I would go with a basic pentatonic scale. I often teach, if they're using electric guitar or definitely going to want to do rock and roll, the basic A minor pentatonic. A lot of students, and not sure, and they're playing acoustic guitar, I'll do a E pentatonic, which is a very easy one. position. And you can improvise with that playing in the key of E, the E chord. That said, I did make a post on what I think are the 5 most useful scales for most guitar students.
Oh, cool.
And I'll try and remember to put a link to that in the description field.
Nice.
It shows the scales. I think I might even explain a little why I chose, though. Another one I know is a chromatic scale. That's really, and I use that a lot in exercises to practice getting the fingering right and timings starting very slow.
Yeah.
That's one of the benefits of playing scales, actually, is to just practice getting good basic fingering.
Yeah. That's good.
Do you teach scales?
Not as much as I feel like I should.
I honestly don't think scales are a must-have for everybody. I think they're helpful, but and it depends. Again, if you definitely want to improvise, definitely have to learn scales.
Yeah, I think it depends on your goals.
If you want to write music, it's really helpful to learn your scales if you're playing like classical and reading, because it's so much easier to read when you can play through the scales and you know where the notes are coming from.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
But basic folk guitar, I say helpful, but not mandatory.
I agree. Okay, we have some online questions now from our live folks. So we have Michael, I believe you pronounce it Witty, but I'm not sure, who says, it is easy for me to write lyrics and incorporate song structure into them, but it is hard for me to write the melody and chords for them. How to overcome this? So how do you find the chords that match your melody?
Well, first of all, I will say I have never done that. I have never written songs lyrically and then tried to make up music to go with the lyrics. I do happen to know there are a lot of very successful songwriting teams where one person writes the music and one writes the lyrics. So I think it's reasonable to see if you could find somebody that enjoys writing the music and is good at it and can collaborate with your lyrics, at least to get going and get some songs that you enjoy and play good about. Get some songs that you know you've had a part in creating that you like and that you feel good about. That said, learning to write the music, melody, and chords is pretty much what we talked about in this lesson in the beginning.
Yeah.
And I would treat them as 2 separate things and then try putting them together. Since I've never done that, I couldn't give you specific tips for putting them together.
I have. Okay. And it's weird because I'm not really a songwriter, but the few times I've dabbled with the stuff, I have taken melodies that I've heard and then found chords to go with them.
Okay.
It really has a lot to do with a sense of harmony, though, and that's a whole different, we could spend 5 lessons just talking about how harmony works. One tip that I can give you that will get you in the right direction is by understanding the difference between major chord, minor 7, all these different types of chords. If you can hear the difference, then when you're singing your melody, you may eventually be able to hear whether you think you want it to have more of a minor backing or a major backing. It's kind of a theory-y thing. It's kind of a deep theory-y thing, but a lot of it has to do with listening and understanding how notes fit together and hearing in your head what you want to hear out loud, and then you just find the notes that are in that chord, basically. That's the way I've done it. It's like if I have a melody, I say, okay, what else would sound good with that specific note or those 3 notes that I've put together? That's the best way I can describe that.
Okay. I can't think of anything else to add to that.
Yeah, sure. Let's see. Michael Woody also said, if one wanted intensive instruction all at one time in guitar, keyboard, and voice, where would you go to get this on a crash course basis?
I would say probably the university, because I think it's an efficient way, and it's not cheap, but I think they're good at that. And I know when I went to university, I insisted on taking the keyboard and piano and my instrument, which was guitar, private lessons, and maybe something else, theory, of course, all in one time.
Yeah.
I know Boston is well known. There is a guitar institute in the LA area, or they call it MIT Music Institute now because they have bass and other instruments too. But it originally was Guitar Institute. And then even the junior college, I We had a great one here. Laney was great.
Yeah, Laney's music
They had
program.
some really good musicians there that were teaching the theory and keyboard classes. Yeah, you can do. It's really helpful to have private lessons. I'd suggest for your main instrument, you definitely get private lessons. And keyboard is really helpful too if you really want to have a music career for writing, understanding theory.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good question. We've got Michael John, so a different Michael, who says, should I practice with a friend who keeps turning my volume down as he doesn't like mistakes?
I don't know what to say about that.
I say no. No offense to your friend. But, like, again, it goes back to that supportive community thing I was saying. You know, it's like, I honestly barely practiced as a kid because my mom didn't like hearing me play music. So I can see how that can mess with you over time. My recommendation is run far away. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I wouldn't recommend it. Practice a little more on your own first, or find another friend who's willing to work with you and understands that when you're learning there will be mistakes. It's my recommendation.
I'll go with that. I'll go with what she said.
What she said. Okay, so we have Steve who says, how should you decide what genre your song lyrics should go to? And then how do you start putting it to music?
Okay. Genre, not my forte, not my area of expertise. I would say if it were me, I'd be writing lyrics for a genre that I liked and basically decide if my lyrics fit that genre that I want to write for. I wouldn't do it the other way around. I wouldn't write a song and go, where does this fit? But I don't know. That might be a thing, especially if you're a professional songwriter. Yeah. Wherever the money is. In terms of putting music to it, I think we just pretty well talked about that. Yeah. I would either get a collaborator, especially if you want to make money as a songwriter. I would seriously consider a collaborator because it's going to take a long time to get really good at making the music and making the lyrics. And if you can get your stuff out there and get feedback and get better at least one aspect, you can always later on start learning to add music to it. Right. Again, I know it's not going to be necessarily everybody's comfort level to go out and say, hey, I write lyrics, can you write music for my lyrics? But I think it's a thing to worth considering anyway. Right. And Michael also asked a question. I believe that he submitted this while we were talking about bar chords. I find the D string is hardest to get ringing out clearly as it seems to land in the finger joint. Oh, with the bar, I get it. Again, this exercise. And yeah, you've hit it right on why this exercise really works, because it lets you identify where you're having a problem and put a little extra effort on there. You're strengthening your finger at the same time. Plus, you're strengthening, listening to where the weakness is and making adjustments. Right, right. We've got Sapta who says, how many times do you need to repeat something like chord changes till muscle memory becomes permanent? Wow. A lot. Yeah. And of course, some chords more than others and some less. And some people need more with the same chords and some less. Yes. But I would say more than you think. That's probably the best, most utilitarian phrase I could say. Of looking at students, they seem to think they've tried a dozen times and it doesn't work. 2 dozen times it doesn't work yet. Something must be wrong with them. Yeah. I'm thinking dozens and dozens and dozens of times. And it doesn't have to be in one sitting, of course. No. But probably more than you think. Yeah. And I actually recommend you don't do it all in one sitting. That's one thing. When we get new students at our in-person school at Starland, one thing I tell them is you have to do a little bit every day. I mean, because you can practice an hour once a week. Sure, you'll make progress. It's fine. But it's not going to come easily. Take guitar, for example. You guys see me here every month, right? How many times has he shown me the C chord? And I never remember it every time. I can remember like 2 chords. He had to teach me G chord again this morning before we started. And I've been dabbling on the guitar since I was 13. Oh, yeah. I didn't know that. Yep. Since I was 13. Now pressure's on. So the thing is, I don't play guitar. I don't practice it consistently. And when I pick it up, when I try and remember the chords, that I have not done it nearly enough times, even in the little bit that I've practiced at home, to remember these chords. So it does take a long time. How long does it take for a baby to learn to walk? Yeah, right? It's the same thing until they get it. Until they get it,
So that's
but
that's
the
a
babies
good
don't
question.
quit. That's the cool thing.
That's right.
And they don't take it so personally if it doesn't work once, twice, 10 times.
Yeah, they fall and then they just get back up and try. And
that's a good suggestion. Watch babies and do what they do. Only apply it to guitar.
yeah, no, for real. Okay, we've got Lady Della. I think that's how you would say it. They've been like on us, like super excited to see us. And like that's also the person that asked specifically where to get your music. So, question: can you speak to how different shapes for the same chord, an example G, can help you transition from one chord to another? G can be played 3 different ways, so going from G to C is easier.
Good question. Wow. Okay. So I can play more than 3. This is my 4-finger G. This is a 3-finger G. There's a different version of a 3-finger G. I can do a 2-finger G. And I can even do a 1-finger G. I'm just going to miss these thick strings. Now, I'm going to add this. 1-finger G on the 6th string, because sometimes when I'm finger picking, that's all I need. I'm not hitting the high E string. Now, first of all, most of the time I prefer the 4-finger G because it's easy for me to switch to a D. Watch this switch right here. To a D chord, and I use the D a lot with the G. I also like this form of the C chord. It's actually a C add 9, but we'll just call it a C. It goes very easy. It's very hip, modern sounding. So my second form of G I use the most is the 3-finger G with the pinky, because again, the changes going to a C chord, a full C, is a pretty easy switch. And just move these 2 fingers over and put the first finger down. I also like this chord, which is kind of a combination of the G and the C. And it's not too bad going to the D from here. Put the pinky down, and I never use this, almost never, but I do when I'm finger picking sometimes just make a G with the G and the bass note and finger pick with the rest of the notes. I don't hit the high E. If I need the high E, I gotta put the pinky down.
Yeah, Lady Della says, sweet. I didn't know about the other G forms. Thank you. Okay, we have just one more question from Fadi Aziz. Do you have any experience with flamenco or classical guitar?
Yes, both. And my music is all, my recorded music all has this flamenco influence. I can't really play flamenco on here. Well, let me try it. Let's see what happens. Kinda. I'm cautious because it could break my nails. And classical guitar is what I studied in school. Kind of begrudgingly, but I learned to really appreciate it. Didn't at first. It just was a necessity to do the university thing. I'd encourage you to check out my music.
Yeah.
Tomas Michaud on Amazon, iTunes.
I have a question about that. Sure. When you were learning to play classical and flamenco, were you mainly, I mean, of course, aside from the physical technique of it, were you learning how to do it reading tab or notes?
For classical, notes for sure. And it's a very step-by-step process. They insist that you read notes. And after a while, it's not that hard, is it, first?
Right.
Which is why a lot of rock players avoid it. Just the thing with the guitar is notes are a little strange because you can have the same note on the guitar. In writing, it looks the same.
Right.
So it takes a little more figuring out where to put your fingers.
Yeah.
With flamenco, no. I almost completely by watching somebody and memorizing patterns.
Gotcha.
There is tab for flamenco, and I've seen note reading as well. But that's not mostly what I used.
Gotcha. Cool. I always tell my students that knowing how to read music is a great tool to have in your tool belt. You don't necessarily need to use it all the time. But it's a good thing to know how to do. But that's on ukulele, and everyone's different with their goals, too.
I would say probably all classical guitar players read and
Yeah.
read fairly well.
Yeah.
Most flamenco players, I would say, probably don't read. Flamenco is sort of like a Spanish version, I would say, of blues guitar for America. It's more grassroots, and it was traditionally given by fathers and communities to their children, and they grew up and gave it to their children and showed them, how to dance, sing, and play the guitar.
Right.
So they weren't interested in necessarily documenting it, though it certainly is documented now, and a lot of flamenco guitar players who play classical and other styles are great at reading too.
Yeah. I think we got one more question before the raffle. This is from Shelly. Shelly says, I have picked up things I never knew since I'm still learning and play guitar.
Glad to hear that, Shelly.
Thank you. And what I remember I will try and practice. Is there anywhere that is free to go for going over stuff?
I'm not sure what going over stuff, but I will say, go to my blog, tomasmichaud.com, TOMASMICHAUD. And there is a lot of free lessons there, videos, and they're much more organized than you'll find them on YouTube. Yeah. And you can look at my YouTube channel too, and just see if there's something that particularly fits what you want to work on. But you'll find a little more progression or organization on my blog. Yeah,
the blog is great. And then RGS is also great. I know you said free, but there are so many cool resources. I just love the organization of it. You can have a step-by-step guide if you ever get to the point where you want to, kind of invest more into learning. Yeah. I think we're ready for a raffle.
Let's do it. Raffle. So again, these are students who are part of my Real Guitar Success membership program, and they've completed the monthly practice session. Every month they get 20 sessions, one a day during the weekdays. And when they complete them, they're entered into this raffle. Drum roll.
All right. Lester P2.
Lester P. Oh, okay. Lester, we'll find out your name. I assume it's Lester. And you are getting a $50 Amazon gift card.
Woohoo!
Thank you all for playing along. And thank you for being here today. It's really been a pleasure.
Happy 2019.
We'll see you again the first Tuesday of next month, 2019, February.
Bye.